The purpose of education isn't simple to define. It requires reflection of the human experience. But how does one measure the human experience? Do we measure the human experience by looking at an era of mankind? Or do we measure the human experience by a particular culture or social economic status? Although it is difficult to define the purpose of education, my research into the purpose of education has indicated several similarities that philosophers share. These similarities are that the purpose of education is to bring people to a full realization as to what it means to be a human being, to live a uniquely human life, and to aspire to create a life which one believes is worth pursuing. Additionally, educational purposes are designed to develop people's intellect, to serve social needs, to prepare individuals for work or for job force or career, and for these people to contribute to our society both socially and economically. Although these statements may appear limited in scope, the human experience encompasses all of these and looks to extend them through critical and creative thinking. As society has evolved through education, the earlier notion of education preparing or producing a literate society has morphed into that of education producing a learning society. The concept of education creating a learning society means that the key function of education is to create individuals that think intensively and critically. I believe that education is no longer just about teaching children concepts, as this can often be learned through searching and reading online using such tools as Google. Rather, it is about teaching children how to become lifelong learners, to love the learning process, and to provide an environment where all students have the chance to become successful learners and active citizens, regardless of their background. In addition to creating thinkers, Palmer suggests that the goal of education is for each individual to develop his or her.
The creation of effective teacher practices to assist students to become lifelong learners isn't an easy task. However, the empowerment that it provides students renders the task a critical one. The idea of lifelong learning requires a continuously supportive environment instilled by the teacher through pedagogical practice. Such an environment nurtures and inspires students to acquire much of the knowledge, belief, skills, and understanding they will require throughout their lifetime. They can then apply this knowledge with confidence, creativity, and enjoyment in all roles, circumstances, and environments throughout their life. This is the notion of creating a learning society that is able to think critically and problem solve. Although creating critical thinkers is important, it is equally or more important to nurture individuals through authenticity. Palmer's stance on education, the creation of individuals who can develop their authentic self, is fundamental to creating free-thinking people that can make informed moral decisions. He suggests that good educators join self, subject, and students in the substance of life, and that effective teachers are able to weave a multifaceted web of connections among themselves, the learning experiences, and their students, so that the students can then weave a world for themselves. This philosophical standpoint by Palmer is reminiscent of the old traditional Chinese proverb, "Teachers open doors, but you must enter yourself," as he later suggests that the role of the educator is to create learning situations and communities that are eventually owned and maintained by the participants themselves. This notion of lifelong learning is an aim for our educational system. Schofield suggests that an aim for the educational system is important, as without one, any system will have no direction. In other words, if you don't have a direction and goal, how will you know where you have arrived? Bass argues that if we do not keep the end in mind and retain a simplistic viewpoint of educating for the means of teaching concepts, we are doomed to wander in circles. Although this purpose of education is fundamental, other researchers such as Campbell suggest that the definition is not as important as an embedded commitment to the implementation of such ideas. In this case, lifelong learning, closing the gap between the purpose of education and the main game. With this in mind, educational systems such as schools, whilst playing a significant role in developing lifelong learners, are not the only players in this development. This notion of lifelong learning is an aim for our educational system. Schofield suggests that an aim for the educational system is important, as without one, any system will have no direction. In other words, if you don't have a direction and goal, how will you know where you have arrived? Bass argues that if we do not keep the end in mind and retain a simplistic viewpoint of educating for the means of teaching concepts, we are doomed to wander in circles. Although this purpose of education is fundamental, other researchers, such as Campbell, suggest that the definition is not as important as an embedded commitment to the implementation of such ideas. In this case, lifelong learning, closing the gap between the purpose of education and the main. Taking into account the social implications of education, I believe that although the educational system's responsibility on the educational, physical and emotional outcomes of all students is significant, the larger community and society play an important role in educating children. That being said, I also believe that it is the school's responsibility to be accountable for the role they play with the community and the partnerships they create with one another.